Well, here's a story from the past about the underground clinic. And if you ever saw the Matthew McConaughey movie, Dallas Buyers Club, it was very much like that. In fact, watching Dallas Buyers Club was almost traumatic because it was very much like going to work in those days. It really had the feel for what we were doing, trying to avoid the sense of hopelessness in that era when there were no HIV drugs. There really weren't any drugs until 1987. So for 6 years of the epidemic, we were shooting in the dark. And as I said before, Steve Scheibel and I, mostly Steve, would come up with cocktails of drugs of one kind or another that we would try and hold off the AIDS virus. And around 1990, not long after we opened Community Health Network, we were part of a buyers club. And buyers clubs, like the Dallas Buyers Club, had access to these underground drugs that were thought to have some effect against HIV. We actually did that in this our underground or Friday night clinic, where after normal office hours, in fact, what we would do is we would tell Carol Williams, our nurse, who had spent all this time getting us organized and state licensed and all of that, who also said that one of her jobs was to keep Valenti and Scheibel out of jail. We would tell Carol to knock off early, Carol. It's Friday. She had young kids at the time. Just go home and, spend some time with your kids. And she'd, take a breath and, all right, go around, 3:30, 4 o'clock. And we would get ready and finish up with patients. Then the underground clinic started on Friday night. We would order in a pizza. We already had the drugs in the refrigerator and had 2 or 3 people at a time, 2 or 3 patients at a time, who would get these infusions. They were intravenous drugs, and get those drugs at our Friday night clinic. A number of those patients are still around today. So it may have worked or it may have helped in some way, but they weren't scientifically proven. So, as I've said before, we were shooting in the dark, but did it here in Rochester the way they did it in the Dallas Buyers Club. Now, 25 years later, 25th anniversary of Community Health Network, Carol and Steve and I were all there, and it's a photo of Steve telling Carol and finally coming clean after 25 years about the night clinic. And her remarks were the usual Carol Williams wisdom. And she said, "I'm glad I didn't know it at the time, but I'm glad you did it. Well done, Carol. Well done, Steve. We did it."